What's up, guys? It's your boy Zawolki back out with a big, I wouldn't say exclusive, but by popular demand by thousands of you have been wanting to me watch, which dropped yesterday, The Tilted Lawyer and his mock cross examination of Chris Watts' mistress, Nichol Kessinger. Thank the Lord, some professional has the cojones to do this. Omar, you're fantastic. I can't wait to hopefully collab with you. I saw his post that he did on YouTube, which I messaged him on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. So hopefully we hear something back from Omar at the Tilted Lawyer. But you guys have wanted me to watch this of a mocked trial of the examination of all things pretty much evidence related that could happen to bring Nichol Kessinger to a trial and get her convicted of some type of involvement, accessory, whatever have you, because the evidence is there. We've seen it, we've heard it, we've watched it. We're finding little tiny things here and there. It's been 6 years in August it will be since this event had taken place, which is the Watts murders. If you guys that don't know what the Watts murders is, Chris Watts murdered and annihilated his family, and possibly the mistress was involved in some shape or form. And we're gonna be watching this mock-up trial. So I want to go, before we go any further, subscribe to the YouTube channel by hitting the white bar icon down at the bottom right, hit the bell icon next to it so I do post videos like this one. You guys will get that little ring notification that's Wookie myself has posted that video, and then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, I thank you guys so very much for the continued love and support. We are closely reaching up to 51,000 subscribers, but I need one help from you. What I need you guys to do is drop everything you guys are doing right now. We're going to be watching this video, but I want you guys to go over to the Tilted Lawyer right now. Give this man some love. He's taken it upon himself to look into it, dive in professionally, as he is a practicing attorney of law. So he's a professional, aka DA Rorick. I'm not going to say anything, but you keep talking about us junior detectives. This man is an actual professional. But go over there, give him some love. He's at 7,860. I want to see him 10 by the end of the day. You heard me. 10. Go over there, subscribe, and comment, like, and share. But with that being said, I want to get into this video because this video is going to be a little bit of a doozy. Now, it is 2 hours plus long, but again, crime court does not take a quickness. Everything needs to be looked at, dissected, and involved, and we're going to take a look at it. So with that being said, I shouldn't say buckle up because you shouldn't be driving and watching this, but get comfortable, get your drink, and let's get into the video.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tilted Lawyer podcast. And
you know what's funny too is those little things that they're down the bottom left of his screen here.
If you,
the ones that he's got the steam from, I bought one.
have been following my channel, what we are about to perform right now is a super mock, informal cross-examination of Nichol Kessinger.
I can't wait.
Nichol Kessinger being played by my assistant, Melissa, who is filling in for Ileana Colon Rosa for this morning.
She's pretending.
We are going to do a motion in limine.
She's already acting like this woman. Like, she's doing fantastic.
Do some trial prep with Nichol. We're going to do the full-on cross-examination. We're going to have
I'm excited.
A brief discussion about what just transpired, and then we're going to go straight to verdict. And we might, and don't let me forget about it, but we might have the psychic chime in to be the tiebreaker on the verdict of whether or not Nichol Kessinger is guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Stick around, because I have no idea how this is going to go. Let's just do it.
I'm excited. I don't know about you guys.
Whatever you might be going through and wherever you might be, this is Omar with the Tilted Lawyer podcast. I'm here to take your mind off of things. Yes, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not giving you legal advice. We're going to sit and talk like people, as these are the candid thoughts of one practicing attorney, and it's after hours. So have a seat. Feel free to have a drink
1 o'clock.
and join me. Let's get started.
All right, everybody. If I sound a little neurotic on this episode, just understand that I am essentially playing 3 parts in this mock trial. I am both the prosecutor, the criminal defense attorney, and the judge. I'm going to do all three at the same time.
Wow.
And Melissa she's really, really nervous, which is good because this is how she would feel in a real cross-examination, is playing the role of Nichol Kessinger.
But she looks like she's just like she's pissed. Like she's upset. Like she is Nichol Kessinger. Like she's doing a fantastic job.
I'm going to cross-examine her as if she is Nichol, and she really doesn't like me saying this, but she kind of resembles Nichol to a degree that I think is going to work. But for all of you that know everything that's ever been written about this case and have studied it in the last 6 years, please understand that Melissa's doing this out of the goodness of and kindness of her heart.
Oh, thank you, Melissa.
She is not going to be given the opportunity to explain her answers. A cross-examination, the very nature of a cross-exam is that it's driven by the attorney. So whatever hatred that you feel towards Nichol Kessinger, however you feel about however this cross-examination is going to go, please do not be negative in the comments towards Melissa.
Positive, please.
Because she's doing us a great service by coming in and sacrificing herself
and her
to
time.
Take on the personification, to play the role of one Nichol Kessinger. So with that, let's get to work. Housekeeping issues. There's been a motion in limine brought. We've been discussing this case over several pretrial hearings, readiness hearings, to discuss various versions of the evidence, and the defense has a motion in limine to exclude any mention of oxycodone as it pertains to Nichol Kessinger's involvement in it. And as the judge, the presiding judge, I'm going to hear from both sides, but this motion, as it sits on my desk, appears to be brought under Evidence Code 401 as irrelevant evidence, and 403 as this might be just a waste of time. So hearing from defense counsel. Counselor, well, Your Honor, there is scant evidence, no actual evidence whatsoever, that Nichol Kessinger was involved in the obtaining or the administration of oxycodone as it relates to Shanann Watts. We know from the prosecutor's brief that one of their theories of the case is that they want to plant the seed that somehow Nichol was involved in the planning, and they plan on going into this theory in closing arguments, in their opening statements. They want to introduce evidence that is non-existent. And so from those grounds, number one, the charges are conspiracy to commit murder. There has not been any evidence, not one shred of evidence in the 1960 pages of discovery that have been generated in this case that Nichol had anything to do with oxycodone. This is pure speculation and conjecture, and it doesn't relate one iota to whether or not she conspired to murder. And on those grounds, it's irrelevant on 401. However, Your Honor, if on the one hand you think that I'm wrong on that issue, under 403, this should be excluded because it's a complete waste of time. Because there's not going to be any evidence, and because he's going to get on the stand, and Nichole's basically going to deny her involvement in any of this. Just the very mention of this to a jury is basically for the sole purpose of confusing and wasting the time. It would be unduly and unnecessarily prejudicial to Nichol Kessinger to allow any mention of oxycodone, specifically as it relates to her and her involvement in the crime, and specifically to answer the question of whether or not she is herself guilty of conspiring to murder Christopher Watts' family, and I will submit on that. Prosecution, well, Your Honor, goes for a plan. You're asking me to prove that Nichol Kessinger, beyond a reasonable doubt, conspired to commit murder, and part and parcel to our examination and our theory of the case is that Nichol Kessinger not only was involved in the planning of the actual murders, but that these plans were born in and around the end of July. And when that didn't work, then it accelerated to the plan that we all know about on August 13th. That's the subject matter of this trial. And on those grounds, it's highly relevant because it goes not only to credibility, which is always relevant, but it speaks to an escalation of a plan to ultimately commit murder of the victims in this case.
Conspiracy to commit murder.
To suggest that it's prejudicial or unduly prejudicial, of course it's prejudicial. But if you don't allow me to talk about her involvement and the potential planning of the administration of oxycodone as it relates to the murder of Shanann Watts and her children, then you're taking away a vital pog in our theory of the case, and it's going to not allow this jury to understand the full context of how everything gone about, and therefore justice will not be served by excluding this evidence. It's
Amen.
absolutely vital that I be able to go into the planning stages, where began the inception of the plan, and take it to its final conclusion of August 13th. And I will submit with that, Your Honor. Take a moment to consider our show sponsor, Aura Internet
Oi.
Security.
Not gonna
Dominic,
get paid.
what have you to say about all of this? It's okay. Well, counselor, here's how I'm going to rule, and here is my reasoning. The mention of oxycodone, there hasn't been anything in the form of argument and pretrial. There hasn't been any evidence put forth in the discovery that I have been allowed to see that relates to any plan involving murder. And these charges are very specific. It's conspiracy to commit murder. It's not conspiracy to administer oxy. There hasn't been any evidence in the way of text messages and phone calls or admissions to suggest that there was a plan or a scheme to take these victims out through an overdose. We have a full-on confession. There is no evidence to suggest that oxycodone was used in the administration of the crime. And there's not going to be, according to your witness list, any expert witnesses that are going to come in to testify about why or why not oxy was involved or not involved in the murders in this case. And so I find it, although it may be relevant for the minuscule purpose of maybe lodging the potential for a crime, I think.
If you guys are wondering too why I'm not like putting my 2 cents in, I'm listening to it very very in detail, because I want to hear exactly how this would go if this was real life.
I think we have enough without having to go into that, because I think under 403 correctly, if I allow that this conjecture of oxycodone was potentially part of the plan, without any kind of evidence that I know is forthcoming to tie it to the murders, I cannot in good conscience allow that just because it might test the credibility of a plan. If we allow that evidence in and the jury has to contend with that evidence, it's going to confuse them, because this isn't a case about oxy. This is not a case about inducing a miscarriage. This is not a case about whether or not she was involved in obtaining Oxycontin. And you haven't presented anything to me to tie it even tangentially to the murders in this case. And again, I've reviewed the autopsy reports, and there is no indication from the toxicology results that I have seen that suggests that oxy was used in the case. And so therefore, under 403, I'm going to exclude any mention of oxy as it pertains to Nichol. That's my ruling, and that's how we're going to proceed. Now, motions in limine are done. Pardon me. All right, now, Nichol?
Yes.
I'm your defense attorney. What should my name be? Dominic, what's my name? I'm your attorney, Johnny Cash. And listen, I just want you to know, I want you to understand that this is going to be a rough day for you. All right? You have fully acknowledged to many people about your regrets and the pain that this case has caused you because of your involvement and the embarrassment of the affair and all of those things. You need to understand that those jurors right now are looking to tie you to a murder that you didn't commit. All right? I'm your attorney. I believe everything that you've told me. You need to understand that I believe in you. You need to understand that I'm here to protect you. But I cannot protect you from this cross-examination. So let's go over some ground rules.
Okay.
This prosecutor, Omar is going to try to make you crack. He's going to throw everything he can at you to impugn your character. He has to convince this jury that if you're not a murderer already, that you at least planned or involved in the planning of killing this family. Now listen, I know, and you know, we know together, and you need to know that I believe in you, and many others believe in you, that you are innocent of this crime. But you cannot crack under this pressure, so let you be forewarned. The DA is going to get under your skin. He's going to insult you. He's going to try to confuse you. He's going to try to connect you to inconsistent statements that you've given. But you have to trust me that I'm going to be able to rehabilitate you on all of that. He's going to talk about text messages that you know are in existence about you trying to woo the interest of Mr. Watts. And he's going to try to say that you had this plan to get rid of Watts' family so that you could run off with him. But just know that there's text messages that are going to come out in trial that have already come out in trial. And for the purposes...
Which, for those that don't know, this case never went to trial.
I'm breaking the third wall here. But for the purpose of this cross-examination, we're going to assume that the direct examination has already happened. And that Nichol has had the opportunity to say her side, and that she's presented evidence of text messages between her and her friend that point to the
Charlotte.
idea that she wasn't really all that sold on Chris. She was undecided about him, and she didn't really know where it was going to go. It was a 2-month-long relationship. Anything could happen at that point. She was just having fun. She said all of these things in her direct exam. Okay, back on character. You had a chance to say your piece, but you got to understand, there are other text messages that they are going to point to. There's other evidence that they're going to point to. You got to find a way to explain the phone ping. Why were you there in Frederick, Colorado at 6:16 a.m.? They're going to ask you that question. You need to be prepared with an answer. Now listen, the nature of cross-examination is that you're supposed to give yes or no answers. But he's going to ask you questions, and he's going to try to frame it in the way that serves his purposes. You need to remain steadfast and strong. If he asks you a question, you answer directly the question. You don't give him any more information than he needs to have. Do you understand?
Yes.
If I ask you, for example, what did you have breakfast this morning? What did you have?
Nothing.
Perfect. What are you going to have for lunch?
Chicken
And how are you going to cook that chicken?
in a pan.
All right. I really like the way that you're answering it. Breaking the third wall again. Melissa's also worked in my law office for a number of years, and she's kind of well-versed in how to answer.
Is she getting paid
these
for this?
questions. She's heard me go over this spiel thousands of times.
This is extra credit.
So if at any point, if you don't know the answer to a question, it's okay to not know the answer to the question. The events, all this happened 6 years ago. Okay? There's things that you didn't remember days after
Yeah, lied
the
about.
events happened when you went in and talked to investigators. However this goes, all right, it's going to feel bad. It's going to feel like you're having the life sucked out of you.
As she should.
You're going to feel like everybody's looking at you. These 12 jurors are going to be keenly focused on your face.
Which we want.
So knowing that, I don't want you to get excited. I don't want you to get sad. I don't want you to go to any extreme, not anger, not sadness. You know, if you cry or shed a tear, that's fine. But I want you to be even, level, keeled.
She's good at that.
Your objective right now is to not give them more than what they need. Only answer their questions. And if something comes out the way that you don't like, you have to trust me that I'm going to fix it on rebuttal. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Are you ready for this?
I think so.
Okay. Let us begin.
So
All right,
serious.
fast forwarding through the case, there has been a number of exhibits that have, I have to go back to my consultation again.
Oh, crap.
Before I get accused of, Nichol, I just want you to know, you are doing this cross-examination against my advice. You understand?
Yes.
I have advised you to not testify in this. You are here testifying for a specific reason. And your reasons are noble. You want to be able to face the public. You want to be able to face this jury and explain the inconsistencies and answer some of these questions that these thousands, and make no mistake about it, it's not just these 12 in the courtroom.
millions.
Everybody's watching this case. I would never tell you that in a real case, but just understand, this is literally just you, me, 12 jurors. You are taking the stand because you want to clear your name. And you want to be able to look these jurors in the eye and explain from your perspective what exactly happened. And who are you? You were, right now you're 35 years old. Back then you were 29. You got yourself involved in a jackpot. You ended up with this married guy. You thought he was getting divorced. He had kids. You thought that may or may not have been cute. You liked his kids. You were unsure about where it was going, but you liked this guy. You didn't know that he was going to execute his entire family. That was Christopher Watts. That had nothing to do with you. You weren't involved in the planning of this. You didn't condone this. And had you known that that was the plan, you would have left not only a long time ago, but you would have called the cops. You would have done everything within your power to make sure that he was brought to justice. You are not the murderer here. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's what they want the public to believe. That's the job of this prosecutor. They have to get this jury to believe that you are a murderer, not in practice, not physically, not with your hands, but in your conspiring to do so, in your planning, in your cajoling of Christopher Watts, and your manipulation of him to force him to leave his family. Do you understand your objectives?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any further questions before we get in there?
No.
All right. If at any moment you want to pause or you want to take 5, I can't protect you from that. If they ask you questions and you're in the middle of asking a question, just know you're going to have to give an answer.
I'm telling you right now, I've been in court before when I went through the court for my divorce. And I'm telling you, it's a whole nother ballpark for the feels about listening to the judge and the defense or each attorney and so forth. I mean, we had our own attorneys for half custody and her for her half custody, and I'm telling you, it was definitely I couldn't imagine what they would go through if they went through this trial, like the nervousness and the emotions and stuff like that. So just hearing this now, I'm getting butterflies. Like I like the way that he's doing this is fantastic. So Omar, you're doing a fantastic job with your team that you have, but it makes me a little giddy to know that this is a possibility that they could do this.
And it's okay not to know the answer to some questions. If you don't recall, just say, I don't recall. If you can't remember, that's one thing, but just understand the distinction. It's one thing to not recall something, meaning I used to know it, but now I don't know it. And it's quite another to have never known a thing. You need to make that distinction. If this prosecutor accuses you on the stand on a question of doing something that you know 100% was never true, then you say that. If there's any question in your mind of whether or not it may or may not be true, then just simply say, I don't recall. And there's no harm in doing that. Again, there's been a 6-year gap in time at this point. You understand? Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you nervous?
Yes.
I'm nervous.
If you feel yourself getting nervous, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a deep breath, just like this. And you're going to do that 5 or 6 or 7 times. Understand that oxygen is going to be rushing to your brain. The oxygen is going to supplement your brain in the firing of its neural synapses, and it's going to calm you. It's going to have a calming effect, okay? If anything else, let the oxygen protect you. I'll be sitting right here, but the oxygen is everywhere. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Let us get started. Good morning, Ms. Kessinger.
Good morning.
I'm attorney Omar, as you well know. And I just want you to know before I begin my examination that I'm going to try not to talk over you. And I would appreciate if you would not try to talk over me, because we have a court reporter here in the courtroom, and it gets really difficult to try to transcribe everything that everybody's saying if we're all talking over each other. So if you feel the need, I will do my best to try to avoid that with you. Before you answer my questions, it would be really helpful if you would let me finish my entire question. Otherwise, we're going to get caught up, and we might be here all morning. Okay?
Understood.
We've already been here for like four weeks now. It's been a lengthy trial. Everybody's tired. I'm not here to get you. I'm not here to try to make this any more painful than it already is, okay? Can we make that deal together?
Yes.
Very good. So, Ms. Kessinger, you worked as a contractor at Anadarko Petroleum, isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you worked in the Human and Health and Safety Department, true?
Yes.
And you claimed that it was around that time, approximately June of 2018, that you met Christopher Watts.
Yes.
And when you met him in the course of your employment there at Anadarko.
Yes.
All right. Now, when you met him and you first started to talk and hang out, you had mentioned to detectives in 2018 that it was like this casual thing and everything was just you're just kind of going with the wind with this relationship, true?
Yeah.
You're well aware of the perils of marriage.
Yes, I am.
You're well aware of how ugly it gets when a divorce occurs, true?
Unfortunately, yes.
Now, you don't have children, right?
No.
Luckily, you were spared from having to go through the custody and visitation arguments that would have ensued. But wouldn't you agree with me when I tell you that going through divorce is a traumatic experience?
Yes, it is.
Didn't you know that Christopher Watts was married?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you chose to date him anyway?
Yes, I did.
All right. And you mentioned to police that it was your understanding at the very beginning of that relationship that he was on the outs with. So do you want people to at least appreciate the fact that there's various stages of marriage and various stages of separation? And your belief, as he told the detectives, was that he was in the final stages of his marriage, correct?
Yes.
Final stages leading to what would have been an inevitable divorce.
Yes, that's my understanding. That was my understanding.
All right. So what was it that attracted you to Chris?
Well, he was young. He was very good looking. There was not like a huge of an age gap. He worked out. He looked really good. It was mainly physical attraction, if I could say it that way.
All right. So, but when you found out that he had a wife and children, the variables started to increase, didn't it?
Yes.
All right. So you must have had pause at finding out that he had not just a wife, but 2 children. True?
Yes.
All right. And yet, you continue to date him knowing that he was married. True?
Yes.
All right. And let's just get this out the way. I'm not trying to vilify you for doing this. I'm not trying to, you're not on trial for lying to the FBI. But you did tell the FBI untruths. Isn't that correct?
No.
You were not truthful with the FBI. Were you?
I don't understand the question.
The question is, did you lie to the FBI or not?
No.
So your testimony as it stands right now, understanding that you're under perjury, is that everything that you told the detectives in your 3 interviews with them was that you were 100% truthful in everything that you said.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting nervous. I don't know what it is. This is what I want. This is what I want to happen. Is Nichol to be brought and questioned properly in front of 12 jurors of her peers, and to be cross-examinated between a defense and a prosecutor in front of judges and in front of people, and actually found out the truth.
Yes.
Even when you had to go back and correct yourself, say, hey, actually, I said one thing, but I meant another thing. Do you remember doing that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So your contention is
lied.
everything that you ever told the police was 100% truthful.
Yes.
So I shouldn't be able to question you about any inconsistencies in the actual truth versus what you told the detectives. Is that what you're telling this jury right now?
Yes.
Fair enough. I appreciate your steadfastness in doing that. But let me continue with my examination. Christopher had told you that he was separating from his wife, correct?
Yes.
And you were aware that his wife and his children were missing around the time that you talked to the detectives.
Yes.
All right. When did you become aware that his children were missing?
At around the same time everybody became aware of it, when Shanann and both Cece and Bella were nowhere to be found.
Were you aware on the same day that everybody was reported missing?
Yes.
Okay. So, as you recall, and as we've all heard, and it's been testified to, and ad nauseum, the date was August 13th of 2018. You recall that date. And you had phone communication with Chris on that day, correct?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did you also have communication with him on August 14th?
No.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you the phone records about the phone calls that you had back and forth between yourself and Christopher Watts?
Well, it has been 6 years.
All right. So are you saying that it's possible that that did occur?
I would not recall at this point, but it may be possible.
Well, luckily I have the receipts. I have the phone records. And we'll go over that in just a few. But let's talk about how you used to speak with Christopher over the phone.
Oh,
Let's
gosh.
talk about that. How often would you say that you guys spoke over text messages and or
111-minute phone call?
During the course of our relationship, I would say almost every day.
All right.
Every day, almost.
Other than yourself and Chris, who else was aware of this relationship?
Charlotte?
One of my close friends.
All right. Was your dad aware of the relationship?
Yes.
Who else did you tell about this relationship with Mr. Watts?
Jim?
Nobody. I was a little ashamed, so I didn't want a lot of people to find out about it.
Was the shame because you were dating a married man that had children and that the prospect of you continuing to date him would mean the inevitable demise of his family?
Boom.
All right. Is that what caused you shame? All right. Wouldn't it have been so much better if Christopher Watts was single?
Yes, it would have been.
So you were attracted to this guy and you wanted to pursue a relationship with him to some level, correct?
Yes.
Wouldn't it have been so much better if Shanann Watts was just not around?
Don't lead,
I wouldn't put it that way, but
as detective.
But that wasn't the
Dad
question. I
said.
didn't ask you how you would put it, Nicole.
Ho, ho.
I asked you a simple question, and the question was, wouldn't it have been better if Shanann was not around?
yes.
Wouldn't it have been better if his children weren't around?
Not exactly.
Wouldn't it have been easier on your relationship with Christopher Watts if he didn't have a wife or children to worry about and it was just you and him starting fresh?
Yes.
Okay. So, knowing that, isn't it true that you talked to Christopher Watts about the direction of where his relationship was going?
Yes.
And where did those conversations lead?
I don't recall exactly. It's been a while.
It's been a while, but you remember telling detectives that at one point you were like, hey, why don't you work on your marriage? Do you remember saying that?
Yes, I do vaguely, but I do.
Yeah, and you remember saying that, hey, look, don't worry about me. This was a casual thing, and I don't really need, and if I'm paraphrasing or if I'm characterizing what you're saying, correct me, but isn't it true that you basically told the cops that this was a casual thing? You were kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It might have been better for him to work on his relationship. Do you remember saying something to that effect?
To that effect, yes.
And again, not verbatim, but I'm taking liberties with the paraphrasing. So forgive me on that.
Omar's pretty good.
So this was an obstacle in your relationship. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Well, obviously, you guys married. You can't legally get married unless he gets divorced if you want to marry him, correct?
Yes.
And if it's kind of hard to maintain a relationship with somebody that has to go home every night to his wife, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Did you ever meet his children?
Not that I recall.
But you've been in the Watts family home, correct? When they were married.
Yes.
You've been to his you were in his house a couple of times, right?
Yes.
And you remember seeing the photographs of his family with him and the family portrait with his wife and his 2 children.
Yes.
Piss her off.
And you saw how beautiful that house was.
Yes.
And you spent time there in the basement and you saw like all of the children's toys and everything else. You remember seeing all those things?
Yes.
Hey, Dominic, if you want to object to any of my questions, by all means. It's hard to...
You didn't know what could cause damage to Mr. Depp's hand while you were there on March 8th, correct?
Dr. Kipper told me he'd sustained an injury on one of his fingers.
Objection, hearsay.
Wait, you asked the question.
Oh,
Next question.
okay. You said he sustained a...
It's hard to object to myself. That's kind of what I wanted, Ileana. I needed her to do the objections. It's okay. Nothing I've said is really objectionable so far. It's okay. All right. Isn't it true that you told detectives that you were unilaterally uncomfortable being there in the Watts home?
Yes.
And what made you so uncomfortable?
Well, I was in the house of somebody that had a family, and she had no idea. She thought she had a perfect marriage.
Oh, but you know that she didn't have a perfect marriage, didn't you?
Yes, unfortunately.
You knew that there was red flags in the relationship, right? And one of the screaming red flags was specifically you, correct?
Yes.
Nichol, didn't it make you angry to know that Christopher Watts was embedded with his wife and his children and had this beautiful life, and you were just kind of the plan B? Objection, Your Honor. Counselor, what does it have to do with the line? I don't understand where he's going with this line of question. Your Honor, I will withdraw the question. Let me rephrase. Do you recall helping Christopher Watts look for an apartment?
No, I don't recall.
You told the detectives that you were kind of like trying to scope out apartments, buildings with him. Do you remember?
I don't recall, unfortunately.
Nichol, you had a whole 3.5-hour conversation and the whole thing was recorded. And so I don't blame you for not remembering, but let me refresh your recollection. And for the purposes of time, let's just assume that we went to that portion of the video where we're specifically talking about that. And you are specifically saying that you were apartment shopping with Chris. Now that you viewed the video, do you recall saying that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you did. So you were planning something for the future with Chris. True?
I was aiming for it.
And in the course of that conversation, in the course of that planning, that must have involved a conversation about finances, did it not?
I don't recall.
Well, you recalled a whole lot when you spoke to the investigators. You seem to know that they filed for bankruptcy back in 2015.
She knew.
You seem to know that Shanann was this frivolous spender with her money. You seem to know that it brought Chris great anxiety at the prospect of knowing that his wife was such a free spender and he would make this money and it'd be gone just right away. Do you recall those conversations?
No, I don't. Again, it's been 6 years.
Okay, well, should we look at the video when you were discussing that again? Would it refresh your recollection? Your Honor, for the purposes of refreshing her recollection, let us turn to that specific portion of the video. Now that you viewed the video, have you properly been recollected?
Yes.
Okay. So now you recall having those financial conversations with Chris.
Yes.
Okay. Now, hold that thought. When you guys were looking for apartments, isn't it true that you suggested,
Closer.
as you told the detectives, that Watts should find an apartment near his wife so his children may be close to both of his parents? You remember saying that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, look, I'm not here to embarrass you. You've had an affair with a married man, or he had an affair with you.
That she did.
And it's very difficult to have that displayed out in the public like that in front of all of these people. We're not here to judge you on that, okay? But I have to believe when you were speaking to the detectives that there was a measure within inside of you that believed in good and evil, correct?
Could you rephrase that question? I don't understand.
Do you believe there's a difference between good and evil?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe that you have a moral compass such that you believe or you know the difference in right and wrong?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you were trying to, in your interview with the detectives, as you've just seen, come off as a reasonable person. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Because a reasonable person would do exactly what you said. If you're going to get a divorce, then fine. Try to stay close to your wife and kids. True?
Yes.
All right. And isn't it true that Christopher told you that he wanted to move into an apartment in order to save money? And in the course of him telling you that, he just kind of spilled all the beans on the family's
Everything.
finances. True?
Yes.
All right. Isn't it true that he told you that he didn't think he could afford a house by himself? Is it true that you were aware that Shanann worked as a sales rep at a company called Thrive?
Yes.
All right. So you know all of these intimate details about his family. And did you know that Shanann was pregnant?
No.
Okay. I'm going to have to start pushing back on some of these things, Miss Kessinger, because you're aware that we have your internet search history. You knew that, right? Now, you went through this whole exercise with the detectives where you said, oh, look, here's my phone. I don't want to give you my phone. It's kind of embarrassing, but here's my phone. But to your credit, you did turn over your cell phone, correct?
After.
And in the course of doing that, not only did you do that, but you did then the extra solid of sending them your phone statements so that we could monitor your phone calls. Well, not we, but the detectives could monitor your phone calls. You recall doing that?
Yes.
All right. Your claim is that you did not know that Shanann was pregnant when you were dating him, right?
Yes.
This is the answer that you want to stick with. Did you know that despite your efforts to delete the evidence, that they have a full accounting of your internet browsing history?
Yes.
Okay. Knowing that, do you want to change your answer?
No.
Okay. In our review of your internet search history, it has become abundantly clear that you're almost a daily visitor to Shanann Watts' Facebook page. Do you remember visiting her Facebook page?
I don't recall. It's been a while.
Well, you used to do it a lot.
She did
Have you
a
ever
lot.
visited Nicole's Facebook page?
My Facebook page? Yes, of course.
Not yours, Shanann's Facebook page.
I don't recall, but I may have done it once or twice.
Okay, once or twice, but you're aware that it's kind of not the time to tell lies at this point, Miss Kessinger. Don't you want to tell the truth?
Yes.
You came here to tell the truth, didn't you?
Yes.
Don't you want to be honest with the jury?
Yes.
This
You're
is
aware
what
that
should
there's
happen.
victims in this case. There was Shanann Watts. She was a healthy and vibrant wife. Her life was snuffed out of her. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
And there were these two beautiful children that have been the subject of this case, 3 and 4-year-old Bella and Cece. You're aware of that.
Yes.
And you have to be aware at this point, even if you won't admit it now, that in Shanann's belly was a 15-week-old fetus. His name was Nico. He's a victim in this case. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
Don't you want to be truthful with all of us?
Yes.
You don't want to lie to us, do you?
No.
So you know we have your internet search history.
Yes.
Okay. Explain then why your internet search history has almost daily visits by you to one Shanann Watts Facebook page.
And Chris.
Like I said before, it's been 6 years.
Okay.
It's going to be really hard to recall that information.
Well, would it refresh your recollection to take a look at the data?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm approaching the witness what has been previously marked as Exhibit 394. And we're looking at the evidence. We're looking at all the visits and all of your internet browser history. Okay. Nicole, does it refresh your recollection to look at those exhibits?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want you to explain to me. Well, I don't want you to explain to me anything. I want you to answer this. Isn't it true that you were a frequent visitor to Shanann Watts' Facebook page?
Yes.
Almost every day, correct?
Yes.
You saw the evidence. Okay.
She's got to be watching this.
Isn't
man.
it a little, wouldn't you agree it's a little odd for you to tell me that you had no knowledge of Shanann Watts being pregnant when you were frequently visiting her page every single day?
I could have visited her page daily, like it shows in the exhibit. But like I said before, it's been 6 years, so I can't recall the information exactly. But I not necessarily would have scrolled through and read every single post of her. I could have just looked at the pictures.
Every girl
All right.
does.
Well, so were you just looking at pictures?
It could be.
Do you remember that one time on Father's Day around 2018 in June when you visited Shanann Watts' Facebook page. Do you remember the subject matter of her Facebook post? There was only one.
I believe it was something regarding Father's Day.
It was on Father's Day. And it was a Facebook post praising Christopher Watts for being an amazing father and husband. Do you recall?
Yes.
And it was this huge picture of the family. And
Omar,
it
you're doing
was,
fantastic.
Congratulatory and celebratory in nature, and the fact that Christopher Watts was an amazing dad. Do you recall?
Now that I saw the evidence, yes.
And in that post, there was reference to little Nico on the way.
It was.
Do you recall?
Now that I saw the evidence, yes.
Okay. So explain yourself when you try to tell detectives
That you
that
didn't
you had
know.
no idea that Shanann was pregnant.
Like I said before, it's been 6 years, so I really can't recall the information exactly, but I could have just scrolled down her page and not read every single word she read. Just looked at pictures and casually glanced by, and then moved forward on Facebook.
Okay. How many persons' Facebook page do you visit on a daily basis?
It's really hard to recall at this point, but I could say like maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4. In the entire existence, there's 3 or 4 Facebook pages that you visit on a daily basis.
It could be.
And you can name those people, couldn't you?
Yes.
All right. Assuming then you would, and why do you visit their Facebook pages on a daily basis?
Generally, it's because they're friends or acquaintances I really talk to a lot.
Okay. But isn't it true that you visit their Facebook pages because there's things on that page that you were interested in?
Could be not.
Was that a yes or was it a no?
It depends on
Oh,
the evidence.
man.
The question is, isn't it true that you were
This is what we needed. The hardcore questions that are not like shaded or pushed off, like the direct things that see her BS.
interested in the content of their Facebook page if you're visiting on a daily basis?
It's really hard to say at this point.
Well, let's just try to come up with an answer. If you were visiting a Facebook page, is it because you were interested in what's on that page? Can we agree on that?
Yes.
All right. And the fact that you were visiting Shanann's page on a daily basis demonstrates that you had a keen interest in the goings-on of the Watts family, correct?
Yes.
All right. You were interested in how they were doing, correct?
Yes.
And I'd imagine that Chris had made representations to you about the demise of their relationship, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true then that you would have been interested in the veracity of that statement? When I say veracity, I mean the truthfulness of Chris as it pertains to you, correct?
Accuracy.
Yes.
In other words, if Shanann was posting things on her Facebook page such as, oh, we have such a wonderful marriage and Chris is such a wonderful dad, and we have all of these plans to go to Aspen the weekend after August 13th, wouldn't that cause you concern that Christopher Watts was being less than truthful in his
She
representations
already knew.
of his relationship with his wife?
No.
What do you mean, no?
He did explain to me in various instances that his marriage was ending, and that
But that's not the question, Nicole. The question is, if you saw evidence on
See, that's the thing. She always diverted the question. And this prosecutor, Omar, is like, no, that's not what I asked you. Listen to what I just said and answer the question head on. Not give me anything else.
her Facebook page, now strike that. It's true that you've had conversations with Watts prior, leading up to this relationship, about his relationship with his wife. And it's true that he told you that their marriage was falling apart, correct?
Yes.
I believe the expression that he used was business partners. They were business partners, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so you just told me about 30 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, that you believed that the relationship was on the final stages of a divorce.
And showed
And you
nothing.
said yourself that you've been through a marriage that ended in a divorce.
Yes.
And you're aware of the dynamics of when somebody's really out, when a couple's really out, it looks a whole lot different than a happy married couple, doesn't it?
It's difficult to answer that question.
Fair. And I'll strike the question because that's not a fair question to ask you. But what I'll tell you, what I will ask you is this. when you studied and you examined Shanann's Facebook page on all of those multiple occasions, your understanding of Christopher Watts' interpretation of the relationship versus the content that you viewed on Shanann's Facebook posts, not just on Father's Day, but before
Multiple
and after.
occasions.
What about the content on that Facebook page corroborated that they were getting a divorce?
Nothing.
Exactly. Nothing. And so when you tell
Mic drop.
this jury that you were unaware of the family dynamics of Christopher Watts and his family, that's a lie, isn't it? Nichol, it's okay if the answer is yes.
Should we rephrase the question?
Dominic, what was the question? Can I get a transcript reading?
Pretty much, if she's frequenting.
Got it.
Shanann's posts.
So the question was, if you are frequenting Shanann's Facebook page on a daily basis, isn't it true that you were lying when you tell this jury that you had no idea that she was pregnant or that they had a happy marriage or whatever?
I did not know she was pregnant until a lot after, but I was aware to some extent of the dynamics of the family because of what Chris told me.
Okay. You claim that you last saw Christopher Watts in person on Saturday, August 11th of 2018, correct?
Yes.
And on that night, I believe that you guys
Lazy
you
dog.
went out to dinner at the Lazy Dog restaurant near Interstate 25 and 144th Avenue, correct?
The other one she didn't like.
And you believe, you told detectives, that you met at around 5 or 6 that night. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
And that you were home around 10 o'clock that day?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a little bit sooner.
It could have been sooner or later.
Do you remember Chris hiring a babysitter for the purposes of allowing you guys to go on that date?
Yes.
Were you aware that Shanann was out on she was out of town
In Arizona.
on the night that you made when you guys had that date?
Yes, I was.
You're aware that Chris hired a babysitter to watch the kids while you guys went out?
Yes.
All right. Prior to that, though, how many times had you guys been seen in public together?
Not meant.
I would not recall. It's been so long.
That was only you. Well, you told detectives that it was only one of a few times that you had
Once
been
or
in public
twice.
with Watts, because usually they were at your place. You recall?
Yes, I do.
And you were at the Watts residence for a couple of times, correct?
Yes.
All right.
At least 3 or 4.
And you said that you didn't want to go to the Watts house because that was a space that he shared with his wife. Correct? All right. It made you really uncomfortable to be in that space, didn't it? Because didn't it make you feel like a plan B? Isn't it true that you were just the backup plan?
I wouldn't say it that way.
Well, lots of people would say it that way. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
This was a man that invested 8.5 years in that woman, Shanann Watts.
Only
True?
a few months with her.
Yes.
They had a 4 and a 3-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and one on the way that you claim to not have known
No.
about, but never mind that. But he had at least 2 kids that you were aware about that you'll admit to, correct?
Yes.
All right. Doesn't that feel terrible? To be the plan B?
When you put it that way, it does.
Yeah. But that's not how I'm putting it. That's just the way that it was. Isn't it? Didn't you want to give Christopher Watts his first boy?
I don't recall saying that.
Exhibit 397.
Do you recall text messages where you told Christopher that you wanted to give him his first boy?
It's been so long. I don't recall.
Okay.
Well, Omar's got you.
Your Honor, sidebar. Okay, we're going to take a brief sidebar.
I know what that is.
because I don't recall off the top of my head if there was a text message specifically stating that.
There was.
But I want it known that I'm going to revisit that over the break, and We'll talk about that later. All right, sidebar is over. All right, let's talk about. I can't. It's already 50 minutes in. Jesus Christ. Okay, I got to get through this. I'm breaking the third wall again, folks. In real life, this would be like a 2 or 3 day cross-examination.
I would say it would take
I'm trying
a while.
to get this done in 45 minutes to an hour, 90 minutes. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to hit the highlights. There's a lot that I'm not going to go into because of just...
Everybody give this man some love. He is doing fantastic. It's like I'm really watching like all the other cases that we've seen on that have been public. Like this is, I'm literally feel like I'm watching this being done in real life.
Time constraints. Just understand, if you're screaming at me through your screen to say or ask specific questions, it's for one of two reasons. Either one, number one, it's either not relevant or hasn't been admitted into evidence yet, or I just simply don't have time to get to, which is probably the
second
more
one.
reliable. All right, Nicole, never mind my plan B narrative. The point is that Christopher Watts was well ingratiated with Shanann Watts and his children, correct?
I don't know at this point.
Well, let's just take it down to its most elementary level. He was still married to his wife.
Yes, he was.
With children.
Yes.
And in order for you to take Shanann's place, she had to be gone somehow, some way or another, correct?
Yes.
Whether that meant divorce or whether it meant snuffing her off of the face of the earth, she was in the way, wasn't she?
Objection. I could hear that.
Okay. So at that point, at the Lazy Dog,
They were
when
hiding
you
anymore.
guys are having this date, isn't it true that you and Chris had conversations about him ending Shanann and his children?
I don't recall that.
All right, fair enough. But, and you're right, we don't have any transcripts to say otherwise, but isn't it true that you were having conversations with Chris about future plans?
At some extent, yes.
Isn't it true that you were searching for wedding dresses?
I don't recall that.
Oh, but you spent a couple hours researching wedding dresses. Don't you recall? Well, let me get back to that. Let's just go through some of these questions, all right? You told investigators that, again, you try to maintain that this was a casual thing, correct?
Yes.
And as you're sitting here right now, you're trying to tell this jury that you had a casual relationship with Christopher Watts, correct?
Yes.
How's it
All right.
casual when you're looking at wedding dresses?
Isn't it true that you told detectives that if you would have found out that Shanann was pregnant, that you would have just left them? And that would have been the end of it, correct?
Yes.
So isn't it kind of funny then that you actually came across, according to your internet search history, a Facebook post where Shanann specifically said that she was pregnant and that you viewed it for some time?
I don't recall that.
Nicole, how was your reading comprehension?
Oh, man.
Pretty good? Like if I give you a paragraph to read, are you going to be able to tell me what the paragraph is about?
Yes.
Well, in that paragraph, Nicole said, or Shanann said that she was pregnant. And that would have been a topic of great interest for you, wouldn't it have been?
Yes.
Because you said if you knew that she was pregnant, you would have left. True?
I don't recall that.
You just said it right now. You just told me that you
He's
agreed when you
attacking,
I said I told detectives that if I found out that Shanann was pregnant, I would have left. Correct?
Yes.
But you didn't leave, did you?
She stayed.
Not only did you not leave, you maintained the relationship. You were going out. You physically saw him on August 11th, correct? You were making plans for the future with this man, correct?
At some extent, yes.
So then you were lying to the detectives. You were not going to leave. True?
Which is a federal crime.
Isn't it true that you never planned on leaving Christopher Watts?
I wouldn't say never, but
Isn't it true that you had no plan to leave Christopher Watts, even after having knowledge of the fact that Shanann was pregnant?
He good.
So if in your mind, this is only a viable relationship without little Nico, and this is only a viable relationship without Shanann and her kids, you had to have them gone, correct? Objection. Misstates the testimony. There would be a transcript reading of whether or not she mentioned specifically that, and then I would rephrase. The rephrase is this. Maybe I should stop doing that because it's wasting time.
I like it. I like what he's doing.
Isn't it true then, because you had no plan to leave Christopher Watts, that the only way that that would have been a viable plan would have been to get rid of him or her, Shanann, and the kids? It's just a yes or no.
I don't know how to answer that.
With a yes,
Yes
or a
or
no?
no. She's not allowed to
Let's
say a
backtrack.
story.
You just told me, as he told the detective 6 years ago, that had you known that Shanann was pregnant, you would have left Chris. And then you just told me that you had zero plans to leave Chris. And you told me prior to that, that the only way that this relationship was viable in the future is if Shanann and the kids were gone. True?
Yes.
Okay. And you had made future plans with Christopher Watts, correct?
To some extent, yes.
And part of those plans included discarding of his family. Isn't that true? Now, when I say discard, you don't have to mean it the way that I mean. But they had to be gone one way or another, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Nichol, why would you be looking at wedding dresses if you had told the detective that this was just a casual relationship?
Because I like them.
Well, on August 4th, you had been dating Christopher Watts for about a couple months at that point, correct?
Yes.
Right? And you looked at wedding dresses for a couple of hours.
While he was
True?
in North Carolina.
I don't recall.
You said because you liked them.
Yes.
All right. And I had imagined that when you were looking at those wedding dresses that you had envisioned yourself in at least a few of them, correct?
Yes.
Did you have visions of walking down the aisle with Mr. Christopher Watts?
I don't recall.
But you recall looking at the dresses.
Yes, I do.
All right. If it wasn't for Christopher Watts, who would it have been?
I don't know. I just like dresses.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fair enough. You knew that on August 9th, 2018, Shanann left on a business trip to Arizona. You remember that, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you were aware, well, that she was coming back on August 13th.
Yes.
All right. You knew that.
Mic drop.
Let me backtrack a little bit. Okay. I want to commend you for coming to law enforcement at the time that you did. During this investigation, it takes a lot of guts. And you should be given credit for that. 100%,
To
absolutely.
Better her name.
But you came to the police because you wanted to get to the bottom of this, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You wanted the truth. You don't want to hide anything, true?
Yes.
All right. But isn't it also true that your workplace supervisor is the one that informed Agent Tammy Lee about the affair? And this was on August 15th.
It was
You recall that? And then you caught wind of Anadarko finding out about your affair. And it wasn't until that point that you decided to come to law enforcement, correct? All right. So prior to that, you hadn't offered your services
Damn.
in any capacity. It was specifically because you wanted to
Better your name.
marshal the evidence, as they say. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
He's pulling out all the stops.
As a person that is interested in truth, and as a person that is very believably testified that she wants to tell the truth, Nichol, why were you searching about tracing text messages and then deleting those searches?
It's been a while. I don't recall.
Well, why would you delete your searches, your internet searches for how cops trace text messages?
It's been so long. I don't know.
Nichol, this was an investigation into the murder of 4 people. And the cops were looking to get to the bottom of it. And you said that you were looking to get to the bottom of it. Why would you destroy that evidence?
I don't recall.
Is it because you were hiding guilt of your involvement? Objection. Sustained. I will ask a different question. You searched, can cops trace text messages? You remember making that search? Well, it's in your internet search history that you just looked at. Would it refresh your recollection to see the record of the text messages? Let's assume that I've already done that. Now that your recollection has been refreshed, do you recall sending or making that search?
Yes.
Okay. But you're going to tell us that you don't know the reason why you did that. Is that a yes? Mm-hmm. So then is it then fair to state that the subject matter of what you were interested in was what the cops could recover from your text messages, correct?
Yes.
All right. How long you searched, how long do phone companies keep text messages? Why were you so interested in that?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Is there messages that you didn't want the cops to see?
Maybe.
Miss Kessinger, if you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you just tell them everything?
Exactly.
I was dating a married man.
Damn the affair. Pardon me, Your Honor. Nobody's implicating you here on the affair. You have a dead wife and 3 dead children, and you're concerned about an affair. I find that hard to believe as somebody who just 45 minutes ago told me that you were interested in the truth. Explain yourself. Objection. Harassing. Sustained. I'll move on. This would work so much better if Ileana was doing it. You had a 111-minute phone call with Chris on Sunday night. You remember that? He spoke for 111 minutes. Now, I'll spare us the suspense because I don't suspect that you're going to tell us much about what was said in that conversation. But you're aware now, you have to be aware now that that was just hours before the murders occurred. All right. 111 minutes. There's not any occasion in your phone records where you had a 111-minute conversation or something similar to that with Christopher Watts. What were you guys talking about?
I don't recall.
Were you discussing your future plans to go to Aspen, maybe?
I don't recall.
Were you talking about the potential end of the relationship and what it was going to look like, just the two of you?
I don't recall.
You don't recall anything about that. That would be very interesting if we could know the answers to that, though, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
And when the cops asked you about that phone call, and it was just days after, granted, it's been 6 years now, but you couldn't remember when it was just days after that phone call had taken place, when you spoke to the detectives, correct? This phone call took place on August 12th. The closing hours of the day on August 12th. You were interviewed by the detectives. When was it? Like on August 18th, August 21st? I forget. But it was just days after. And you didn't have anything to say to them back then. Were you afraid of what the subject matter of that conversation was going to be revealed as?
Maybe.
Why would you be afraid as a person that has nothing to hide?
Like I was trying to say before, I was dating a married man. I felt ashamed for myself. And even the fact that people were finding out about it made me feel much worse. So, of course, I didn't want anybody to question me on that.
Nichol, with all due respect,
She's good.
Shanann, Nico, Bella, Cece, don't give a shit about your moral conundrums of your affair. This was an investigation into a murder. And, Your Honor, please excuse my language. Do you understand the gravity of what we're doing here?
Yes.
Do you think the jury is interested in whether or not you had an affair with Mr. Watts?
I don't know.
We've already been through it. It's already been exposed. About as much as it can be exposed, it's been exposed, it's out there, right? Now we're looking for justice for these victims. Wouldn't you agree that these victims deserve justice?
Yes.
Do you agree that these victims should not have suffered the fate that they suffered? Do you agree that the person that is responsible for their fates should be punished?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let everybody rise as the jury enters, and the jury is now taking their seat, and we are now beginning. Miss Kessinger, let's talk about the day of the murders. Let's talk about August 13th.
Okay.
I know it's been 6 years. But we learned some things about your cell phone activity. But you volunteered that information with the detectives, you recall?
Yes.
All right. So, Nichol, there is a significant gap in your phone activity on the morning of the murders. Now, are you aware that there is a gap?
It's been 6 years, so I don't.
Well, let me
recall,
explain
but
what I mean.
believe so.
How often are you on your cell phone?
When I'm working,
Let's relate it to 24. We're in 24. How often are you on your cell phone
24 meeting this year.
this year?
Quite a while.
Well, when you wake up in the morning, do you pick up your phone?
Yes. I
Are
do.
you checking it throughout the day?
Yes.
Is there ever an hour that you're not having some kind of activity on your cell phone?
Yeah, when I'm at lunch, when I'm sleeping, working out.
Texting, it's tracking your steps, correct?
Yes.
I don't know if cell phones, well, I don't know if mine does that, but some cell phones do that. You're browsing the internet and all these things, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And would that have been pretty much the same back in 2018?
Yeah,
It
pretty
could
much.
Well, your cell phone activity pretty much describes what you just said. You're like, you have pretty much cell phone activity every 5 to 10 minutes. Does that sound like you?
Yes.
Okay, so then explain to me why, on the morning of the murders, at the times that the murders were being committed,
She was
your cell phone
silent.
was dead silent.
It's been 6 years.
No explanation? Didn't you turn off your cell phone? You turned it off, didn't you?
I don't recall.
Did you put it in airplane mode?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, had you ever done that before?
Yes, I have.
No, you haven't. Nichol, we got your cell phone records. Your phone is never not active.
Always.
Would you like to review the cell phone records to refresh your recollection?
Yes, I would.
Okay, let's assume that I've given her the cell phone records that I have to save time. You can see your phone activity every single day, constant activity. Wouldn't you agree? Isn't that what this exhibit shows? Yet on the morning of the murders, coinciding with the hours that the murders would have occurred, your phone is silent. And you're going to tell this jury you don't have an explanation for it, correct?
I don't.
That's
It's
okay.
been 6
That's okay.
years.
That's okay. Don't get excited. Did you know that the detectives combed over your phone records over a month after the murders occurred?
And she never pinged in Colorado.
Well, you do know that because you gave them the phone bill.
And
My
she was
phone,
on it
yes.
every day.
All right. And on that, there was no activity near the Watts residence or anywhere in Frederick, Colorado. You recall?
No, unfortunately not.
But I'd imagine that you would have had no reason to go there because Watts was in jail, right?
I'm guessing so.
Well, not you're guessing. He was. He was in jail.
No, I'm guessing that I didn't have any reason to go.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I got you. Now, the morning of the murders, you didn't clock into work until 3 that afternoon. Is that normal for you?
No, it's not normal.
Well, why did you clock in at 3?
It's been 6 years.
Now,
It's
you've
really hard to recall.
how many times would you clock in so late for your job?
Never.
I don't have like a set answer for that.
Could you count? Would it be more than once?
Yeah, it could be more.
Would it be more than twice? Would it be more than 5 times?
No, I don't think it goes to that exact.
Something less than 5
Yes.
in the entire time you were employed.
Yes.
But on that morning, you clocked in at 3 o'clock, correct?
I believe so.
All right. Now, are you aware that a witness came in to testify? One of the neighbors of the Watts residence. Did you know that he testified and said that he saw a truck similar to the car that you owned
That
outside
morning.
of the Watts family residence?
Yeah, I do know that now.
Dang.
Why were you there?
No, I'm saying that I do know that the neighbor testified that. I'm not saying that was me.
Oh, that wasn't you. But you do drive a car that was similar to what was described, and you're aware of what he described, correct? You're aware that there was testimony that described the car, the exact same car that you drive. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
All right. And they testified that that vehicle was found in front of the Watts residence on the night of the murders. What were you doing there? Nichol, you were aware how cell phone towers work. When you are in a specific area, if you're within a 3-mile radius or so, or sometimes more or less, your cell phone will ping at specific cell phone towers. Are you aware? Now, there was a tower next to the Watts residence, and are you aware that your cell phone pinged there at 6:16 a.m.?
One time.
No, I'm not aware.
Well, do you want me to show you the records?
Yes.
Let's assume that I've shown you the records. Now resume. So you've seen the record. Your phone pinged there at 6:16 a.m. What were you doing there? Objection, Your Honor, assumes facts not in evidence. She's never said that she was there. Fine.
But her phone
Objection
pinged.
sustained. I'll rephrase the question. Nichol, why did your cell phone ping at the Watts residence at 6:16 a.m.?
I don't know.
Were you there?
I don't recall.
Your cell phone recalled. True.
Yes, apparently.
Not apparently, it did. Your cell phone alerted the universe that it was present at the Watts residence at 6:16 a.m. Isn't that true?
Dang.
Yes,
Okay. Were you without your cell phone on that morning?
it could be.
You lost your cell phone and somebody took it to the Watts residence.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that maybe my phone was somewhere and I didn't have it.
What do you mean you didn't have it? Because you had it at 3 p.m. when you went to work. Did you go somewhere to pick up your phone on that day after you left it somewhere?
I don't recall.
You've never told anybody that. And you were very specific with what you told the detectives about the activities of your involvement with Watts,
He's
correct?
calling her BS.
You never on any occasion said that you left your cell phone with Mr. Watts and then you went to go pick it up later, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only
She's
time you would
texting
have
him.
ever been in Frederick, Colorado, on any occasion, historically, has only been when you were at the Watts residence. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And you told the cops that the last time you ever saw Christopher Watts in person was on August 11th, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what the hell were you doing there on August 13th? Objection sustained. I will move on. Ay, ay, ay. Do you recall making a phone call to a 73-year-old man named Robert of the Ordo Templi Ordinance?
Talked about this yesterday.
No, I don't recall.
Well, it's okay if you didn't, but were you not a member of the Ordo Templi Ordinance? And isn't that an offshoot of Freemasonry, of the Freemason group? And it's not mainstream Freemasonry. It's an offshoot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You yourself are not a Freemason. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Breaking the third wall. I have no idea if she's actually a Freemason or not. I think her
don't
dad
know.
is.
Her dad is.
Never mind. That specific group participated in rituals involving sex magic, didn't they? You don't know the group activities of a group that you were involved with?
I was involved with, but I'm not saying that I knew exactly every single thing they did.
Well, you had to be initiated to become part of that group, didn't you?
I don't recall that either.
Dang.
You don't recall anything that's important to this case, do you?
It's been 6 years.
Now, 6 years isn't that long. I've been alive for 43. How old are you? You're 35.
35.
6 years ago, you were 29 years old. It wasn't that long ago, correct? Isn't that true?
It was long ago. I don't think, Mr. Serrato, that you would recall every single bit detail of your 43 years of life.
All right, well, tell me, what was the main point of this group?
Well, my family belonged to it, so it's mainly the reason why I was involved in it.
Did you perform acts of sex magic?
No.
Did they make you perform sacrifices to initiate yourself into that group?
No.
Nicole, who is Jim?
Oh, Leave Jim
Let me
alone.
rephrase that. There's a gentleman named Jim. He told detectives
Leave him
that you
alone.
met up with Jim at your apartment.
Man, he's
You recall
pulling
that. You
out
told detectives that.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cops started questioning you about, I say cops, I don't mean to be disrespectful. The FBI agents questioned you about who was Jim, and you said, oh, no, leave Jim alone. You remember, do you remember saying that?
I think so.
All right. At 5:01, you called Chris twice. You remember? On August 13th.
I could have.
All right.
You did.
You called him twice, but then you deleted the calls. Why? Isn't it a normal practice of yours to delete calls after you make a phone call?
No, not really.
If I were to pull up your phone log right now, would I see a bunch of deleted calls, or would I see a history of the calls that you made and accepted and otherwise?
I think you would see a history of calls.
All right. So why would you delete that call after you called him? What were you afraid of, Nicole?
I don't recall. It's been too long.
She doesn't recall anything, apparently.
At 11:09 that night, you made a 51-minute phone call between yourself
And
and
Mr.
Chris.
Watts.
Do you recall that?
We had calls almost every single night.
No, not every single night. This isn't every single night, is it?
And it's not
This
that
is
long.
the night of the murders, isn't it?
Yes.
You were aware that his wife and family was missing, correct?
I don't recall if it was a DAP point.
Let
or
us
a
recall.
route.
Your Honor, I am looking at what's been previously marked as Exhibit 350.
Stuff
Oh,
abstained.
On August 14th,
Like saying that.
2018,
That's why I said
this
it.
would have been the day after the murders. Is that fair to say?
Mhm.
All right.
Where they talked.
Around 3:40, you did a web search on a Facebook page. Do you recall that?
No, like I said, I use Facebook almost every single day.
All right. Well, the thing that you looked at was a post, and the post said, and I'm going to read because it's already been entered into evidence, please share and pray that beautiful Shanann Watts and her two precious daughters are found safe. They are from the Erie and Frederick, Colorado area. Shanann Watts and her two daughters, Bella and Celeste, are missing. She made it home to Colorado from Scottsdale at 2 a.m. Her husband left work at 5 a.m., but Shanann never made it to school for the girls' first day back. Her car and phone were found at home, but these three have not been found. Shanann is 15 weeks pregnant. Thank you and God bless. Do you recall that post?
Not exactly, but yes.
Well, that was basically alerting the fact that people are missing. True?
Yes.
All right. And then on August 14th at 5 o'clock, you did a search, an internet search, and I quote, can cops trace text messages? And that was essentially an hour and 20 minutes after you read that Facebook post. Do you recall that?
Now that I see it, yes.
Why were you interested in what cops could trace?
I don't know.
Let us continue. Seconds later, there was another search entered.
They thought they were
Excuse me.
smart.
Can cops trace text messages? So you searched it twice. And then at 5:24, there was another search. How long do phone companies keep text messages? Why were you so concerned about that, Nicole?
I don't know.
You were a truth teller, correct?
Yes.
You want to get to the bottom of this.
Yes.
What were you afraid that the cops were going to find on your phone?
I don't know. It's been too long. It's been 6 years. I could have thought different that day. I don't know.
Time is relative, isn't it? There's some things that happen 30 seconds ago and you'll never remember it again. And there are things that happened 40 years ago and you'll remember it for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes.
So the events of your boyfriend, if you could, whatever you wanted to call him, Christopher Watts, family going missing, would that not have been a core memory formed in that time?
Could have.
So isn't it a little ridiculous that you, using this space of 6 years as a buffer to shield your guilt in all of this, or the suspiciousness of how this looks? Objection. I know. Let me rephrase. Let me just move on. let's continue about what happened on that day. So 5:01, you called Chris twice, deleted the calls, and that coincided with your internet searches about what cops can trace, correct?
Yes.
All right. At 11:09, the night of the murders, there was a 51-minute phone call between you and Chris. You said you didn't remember anything about that. 12:09, Chris called you back for 31 minutes. What did you guys talk about?
I don't remember.
I didn't
She
expect you
remembers
to.
nothing.
The way this has been going. At 1:51 a.m., at 1:12 a.m., you called Chris for about 3 minutes.
This is how the FBI, the police, the DA, all these people should have called out NK's BS. That, surprising, you don't recollect it at all. You don't remember this. You don't remember that. You don't. Omar is hitting it head on the nail like it should have gone. Bravo. That's all I gotta say. Bravo.
Do you remember that?
No.
But at 1:51, he called you back and you guys talked for 8 minutes. Do you remember?
Maybe. I don't know.
At 1:58 a.m., there was a phone call that occurred between you and Chris at around 2:01 a.m. Do you remember that?
No, unfortunately.
Well, there was a 1-minute call, and there was an 11-minute call between you and Chris. Did you know at the same time that phone call occurred that Christopher Watts was in contact with the detective who was investigating this case?
No, I don't remember that.
Of course you do, because isn't it true that you were listening in on the phone call?
I don't remember.
Nichol, it's rather disrespectful, wouldn't you agree, that these jurors are sitting here and listening and trying to make sense of your story, and you just happen to not have any recollection of the most important aspects of this case? How do you explain yourself? Objection, relevance, understood. Sustain, I'll move on. Why did you try to destroy your SIM card?
I don't remember doing that, unfortunately.
Shocker.
Oh, should we just add this into the pile of other important evidence that you just are conveniently choosing to forget? Objection?
Shocker. She forgets everything. Omar sees it too, and he's a professional, not a junior detective.
At this point, I have no further questions for Miss Kessinger. There will be no rebuttal. Oh, well, there will be some rebuttal. Defense counsel wants to come in to offer a brief redirect of Nichol Kessinger. And so let's do that. Nichol, this is Johnny Cash. You're a defense attorney. We're friends, if you can recall. So you said a lot of troubling things, but one of the things that you explained was that this was a casual relationship between yourself and Mr. Watts, correct?
It was not.
All right. And I don't mean to use leading questions on my direct, Your Honor. I'm just trying to set the context. Do you recall texting Charlotte, your friend, on August 12th, specifically about Christopher Watts?
It could have been possible.
Okay. I'm going to offer you a transcript that I want you to review. Well, number one, do you recall what subject matter of what you spoke to Charlotte about?
Not exactly.
Would it refresh your recollection to read a transcript of what was said?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, approaching the witness with what's previously been marked Exhibit 351. And just, if you can, without reading it, peruse those transcripts, and when your memory's been sufficiently recollected, let me know, and then we will resume. What did you say to Charlotte about the state of your relationship with Christopher?
Somebody hire this man, okay? This man needs to go on trial with this whole case and take this. I want him to be the DA. Somebody make this man the DA. Somebody got to do this. This man's good.
That I was seeing somebody, but that I felt that I was going to be always in second place because he had kids.
Weren't you concerned about the fact that every guy that you meet seems to have kids nowadays? Isn't that true?
Yes.
But did you also say that you thought it was a positive that he had kids?
Yeah, because he cared for them.
Did you think that he was a good dad?
Yes, I did.
All right. You even mentioned to Charlotte that he was all about his kids, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Isn't it true that you had mentioned to Charlotte that you weren't really sure about Chris?
Yes.
So isn't it fair to say that you,
But then she also told Charlotte, it's the best sex I've ever had.
even if you were talking about having plans, you weren't certain about what those plans were going to be?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Any redirect? No redirect. All right. Let us rest. Okay. Cross-examination is over. Let us offer some closing arguments. All right. And the way that we do this, the prosecution gets to go first and the defense gets to go second. And usually the prosecution gets to have a rebuttal to the defense's closing argument, but we're not going to do that today. And I'm going to try to keep this brief, like 2 minutes each, because this has already gone on for about an hour and a half now.
I'm enjoying it.
So, closing arguments. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is a hard thing to have to try to convict an individual of murdering somebody, anybody, conspiring to execute somebody's entire family, but that is the charge that's been brought upon Nichol. You just heard her testify for an hour and a half about the goings-on of her relationship with Christopher Watts. And some of it made sense, but so many unanswered questions that she couldn't answer. And I think it was appalling and insulting to your intelligence to suggest that she couldn't remember the most burning of questions that you all have of Miss Kessinger. What was her car doing there on the morning of the murders? What were those phone calls about? What was she talking about with Chris at 2 a.m. the night after the murders? Was she listening in to the phone call with the detectives? She came in and she wanted to convince you guys that she was a person that was invested in the truth.
I gave nothing.
She wanted to convince you that she was a person that wanted to do the right thing. But when push came to shove, when the lives of Shanann and those 3 beautiful children were in peril, and it wasn't readily apparent to anybody yet that they were gone from this earth, she was deleting evidence, not just any messages, not just any evidence. She was deleting text messages between herself and Chris.
And Charlotte.
Phone histories between herself and Chris. Search histories of things that she had searched. She tried to destroy a SIM card. It is indisputable, if you believe in common sense and reason, that she was at the Watts residence at least 6:16 a.m. the night of the murders. You haven't been shown any evidence to suggest that she physically committed the murders, and we haven't charged her with that. But what she is charged with is the conspiracy and the plan to commit those murders. As an underlying charge, you are also on notice that she has been charged with the destruction of evidence, which is a federal crime.
It is.
That carries with it a discretionary prison sentence. She came in here and admitted on the stand that she deleted evidence. It's indisputable that she got rid of evidence and destroyed things. And indeed, you guys had questions for her that she's never going to be able to answer, ever. This was her one chance to come clean with everything, and she failed. Nichol Kessinger is guilty of obstruction of justice by every measure. She impeded upon law enforcement's ability to solve this case. And how does she do that? By destroying evidence. She's guilty of those 2 charges out of her own mouth. What you must consider is whether or not she conspired to murder this family. But you heard it. You heard her say that this was not a viable relationship going forward with Shanann and the children involved. The only way this was ever going to work out is if they were gone in some capacity. And though you might say that, okay, well,
I don't know about you, but I'm getting goosebumps. Like, this man is like, I just want to slow clap. Like, I've got goosebumps. This is what us junior detectives have been begging and asking for. And this man is making a mock trial of it. Like, what would happen? Not mocking, a mock trial, a pretend trial that should be and hopefully will be one day about this case.
that leads us to the reasonable conclusion that, well, divorce your wife. But that's not what happened. There's only one reason why somebody gets rid of evidence or tries to delete evidence or tries to hide their tracks or cover their tracks, and it's if they're guilty of something. And the fact that Nichol has come in here and tried to convince you that she was less knowledgeable than she actually was, when she was very clearly at the murder scene, when she was very clearly in constant communication with Christopher Watts the night after the murders, trying to cover her tracks, trying to get rid of the evidence, trying to make sure that she was safe, tells you everything that you need to know about the plan. If there was indeed no plan, then she wouldn't have been there. And just because she wasn't there, if she wasn't there, doesn't suggest that there was no plan. But I'll tell you what makes a lot of sense and what is indisputable is that if you believe that Nichol Kessinger was there at the scene of the murders, and you guys have seen the surveillance videos, you guys have seen or heard the witnesses talking about they saw her car there, you guys have seen the evidence of the cell phone ping. If you believe that she was there at the Watts residence and she came in here to deny it, the only logical reason why that is because she was involved in the planning and execution of the murders. Trying to clean it up, trying to get rid of evidence, trying to marshal the evidence, trying to create a narrative. And she wasn't as smart as she thought she was because everybody found out about what she did. There are 4 victims in this case. Shanann, Bella, Cece, Nico. They're gone. And they were taken at the hands of Christopher Watts through his confession, but you must not forget that Nichol Kessinger was the muse in all of this. She was the silent siren conducting the train, leading us through the destruction of this family in the hopes that she might wear one of those pretty little wedding dresses that she was searching for a couple hours on August 4th and walk down the aisle, eventually taking the place of Shanann so that she could marry Christopher. And if that wasn't her goal, if it was indeed not marriage, then just the ego, perhaps, of getting rid of this family so that Christopher Watts could choose him. Whatever you guys want to speculate about that, it doesn't matter. For whatever the hellacious reasons were, Nichol Kessinger is just as guilty of Christopher Watts and what happened. And I urge you to find her guilty because there is no reasonable explanation for what I just said.
Exactly.
She is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And we will rest with that.
Dang.
Who wants to do defense's closing argument?
I'm just astonished how this man is. Like, he's been doing everything I've been wanting.
I've got to do a closing argument here. Hello, everybody. I'm Johnny Cash, defense attorney to my client, Nichol Kessinger. I'm not going to pull the wool over your eyes because you guys are smarter than that. It's very clear that some ugly things happened in this case. And my client is not a saint. She got herself involved in a married man and she found herself in a jackpot. What she's guilty of is involving herself romantically in a man who was heavily invested in a family and nothing more. Was there childish games that she may have played with Christopher to try to...
Coerce?
I don't know, gain his attention over his wife? Sure. But that doesn't make her a murderer. Did she look at wedding dresses? Did she imagine what it would be like as being a Mr. or Mrs. Watts? Maybe. Maybe. If you want to believe that, that does not make her a murderer. And that surveillance footage that we see was so grainy. And we've had experts come in and talk about how this can't be relied upon as an image of Nichol Kessinger, because when you zoom in on the pixels, it distorts the image in such a way that it's impossible with any degree of accuracy to figure out who specifically that is. It may have looked like a woman, as you saw an expert come in to testify that, look, here is a video of a man, and as you distort the pixels, he turns into a woman. The halo effect. We can't rely on that to say that Nichol was there at the house.
Unfortunately, we can't.
Let's talk about the cell phone pings. There was indeed a lot going on that night, and Nichol comes in and she says she wasn't there. Fine, she wasn't there. But a cell phone ping does not put her at the Watts residence. It puts her within a radius of a specific amount of miles. And there is no scientific evidence that came in to testify that those pings are justifiably accurate. And even if you were to suggest that the cell phone ping was to be relied upon, that does not make her a murderer. You saw her text messages to her friend Charlotte. She said, I don't know about this guy. I like him a lot, but I'm kind of in and out. Who knows what's going to happen? He might be a good dad, maybe. She represented that to the detectives. She represented that here on the stand. Like every other young girl that gets involved with a man of which she is hopeful but unsure about. And you can't be sure about anybody in a couple of months. To suggest that she, in the span of June, July, and August, was so infatuated with Christopher Watts after having herself been married and gone down that road, was all of a sudden now, oh, we're going to murder your whole family so we can be together, is beyond illogical. And there is no evidence that has been presented by the prosecution that is going to point to in that direction. It doesn't exist. It's a completely circumstantial case that falls apart if you look at it for longer than 5 minutes, and you guys have been here for weeks. Do not let the emotions of this case force you to convict Nichol Kessinger on the strength of somebody's got to pay. Christopher Watts was the monster that did this. This was done at his hands. He confessed to it. The evidence points to it. And there's no evidence whatsoever but for a wayward cell phone ping at 6:16 in the morning that even remotely points to Nichol Kessinger having any involvement in any of this. You're never going to know what those conversations were about that she had in the early morning hours after the night of the murders. You're never going to know that. And even if you really believed that she was on the phone listening in on Christopher Watts' conversation with the detectives, that does not make her a murderer. It does not make her a conspirator. It makes her an interested party because, yes, she had intimate communications with a man that may have just annihilated his entire family. And anybody in that situation is going to freak out just a little bit. And what the anomaly of her phone activity essentially was her freaking out just a little bit. But she provided all of her cell phone records. Yes, she did. Guilty. She destroyed evidence. She deleted messages. Fine. But there was a point in time when she was forthcoming. She came in and talked to the police. She submitted to them every record they asked her for. They took everything that she had. And none of it points to her being the murderer. Here's what it points to. A girl that was up to no good. They got involved with a married man who was not strong enough to not be able to annihilate his family in the face of the shiny, bright new object that would have never been available to him prior to him working out, mired in his insecurities. He is a monster. Nichol was the mistress. And judge her as much as you want on whatever basis you want to do for that. But do not make the stretch to suggest that her infidelities, that Christopher Watts' infidelities and her involvement in them makes her a murderer. That is an emotional conclusion, not supported by the evidence. And that's not what our justice system is about. We're not about emotional decisions. Have they happened in the past? Sure. But if we're looking to reasonable doubt, is it reasonable to consider that Nichol Kessinger was just a lady that got caught up in something that she had no idea was going to occur?
She did.
And that out of the worst of luck, got stuck with this guy, Christopher Watts, that couldn't control himself and ended up annihilating his family? The odds of that happening to anybody are so minusculely small.
That's why you don't do it.
And the prospect of her being involved in this at all was a shocking, crazy coincidence.
This is not going to be a good outcome to begin with.
Vilify her for destroying evidence. Vilify her for deleting text messages. Vilify her for being the mistress. She's not a murderer, folks. Your integrity must lead your decision in this verdict. Nichol Kessinger is not guilty. And with that, we're going to rest. All right. Both sides have rested, and now we're going to give instructions.
Comment below. Guilty or not guilty?
So the jury and jury
If you
instructions.
were a
and all that.
juror,
Okay.
what would you do? What would you vote?
Melissa, you were not Nichol.
I'm back to being myself. Thank you so
All
much.
right. I need you to give us a verdict. Dominic, I need a verdict. You guys are the
I love how her mannerisms change. Like she's more a little bit bubblier, a little bit more kind of like, and she's like, I'm ready. Let's go.
jury right now. What are we doing? Guilty or innocent?
Guilty.
Guilty as F. All right. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, guilty.
Guilty? Okay. Do you want to know my conclusion? I almost don't want to give my conclusion.
I want to
anymore.
know his conclusion.
Okay. Here's what I think. I think that the prosecution can put on a compelling case. In my opinion, I don't believe they have enough. I think that you two are going to say that, and I think that there's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 jurors that are going to disagree, and either this ends up as a mistrial or a not guilty if it goes to trial with the evidence that we have right now. It's just not enough. Basically, I can't use any of the oxy evidence. The cell phone conversations or whatever, they could be explained in any number of different ways, creating reasonable doubt. And that's what the deliberations are going to go. You guys in the audience, and I already kind of have a feeling that I know how this is going to go with the commenters, but give your verdicts in the comments. I don't want to give a verdict. I'm going to leave that to you guys. I presented the case. I've done it from
Dang
both
it!
sides.
I want to hear what he thinks.
I played the role of judge, prosecution, and a defense attorney.
I can tell you right now when you look through these comments, guilty, 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 guilty. Much love from Zavoki's crew. I'm seeing guilty, guilty, guilty. So just to put that out there, let's continue.
And I think I was even, what else was I today? I don't know. I played all of the roles.
You played
The
like
judge.
4 different.
Prosecution, the first attorney, and the judge.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell
I
her
think we
different
should have a
mannerisms.
tiebreaker. There's a tiebreaker in all of this.
Oh.
Should we consult the psychic?
Yes! Do it!
Dominic, I'm going to the psychic.
Go!
She was on page 89.
She
How did
was.
I get there?
I
How do
showed
do
that.
this? Page 89. Oh, the discovery and the
2,000
I want this man to be the attorney. I want him to be the prosecutor so bad.
All right, the tiebreaker is going to be the psychic that I've been teasing for however many long. So a psychic chimed in on this case.
Again, you can't use this.
And I'm going to tell you what they said. I'm almost there. Was this it? No, it's up a little higher. All right. So this was written by Detective Purcell. This was a witness who won't wish to remain nameless.
Anonymous.
Claimed to be an intuitive, a psychic, a medium.
All this was said before the murders were.
I gotta zoom in on this so I can read it.
Like, put out there to the public.
It says, and friend, it's hard to read this writing. The Lupus Support Group, Facebook only. So this is what the psychic says happened, okay? And this is the closest that we're going to get to the truth, whether or not you believe the psychic or not. The psychic says there was a dispute around between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. I want you to acknowledge the accuracy of this reading.
It's ridiculously accurate.
That Purcell got a hold of this on August 17th. I don't think that any of this information was out there on August 17th.
It was not.
But this is what the psychic says. So there was a dispute between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m.
Which correlates.
Immediately upon arrival, there was a triangle situation, an affair.
Nicole.
Leans towards Chris seeing someone and being jealous. So the psychic, I think, thought that Shanann was the one having the affair. I don't know how else to interpret that. Psychic says there was no intent to harm.
Omar, no,
yeah.
I think it's backwards. I think Chris saw something and got jealous, meaning that he saw Nicole with somebody else. Maybe that's why he got jealous.
Oh, but they're not mentioning Nicole. And so I'm assuming when she gets home, I'm picturing just maybe you're right. I don't know how the medium works.
Yeah, she did
but I'm assuming that they're talking about just Shanann and Chris.
Okay.
You guys, that's up for interpretation. I don't know. But he says there was no intent to harm, that Shanann was strangled and the girls were suffocated afterwards. Described feeling like they were in a bag or underwater. There were moved in truck. Moved in a truck. Moved in truck. There was no bloodshed.
No.
The bodies were driven to deep wooded section not far from the home. There was a lake near the woods, a deep wooded area that was difficult to find.
That's not accurate.
Psychic says there was issues at home related to money.
Bankruptcy.
Which we all know by now that's
there was
true.
Too much time spent working.
Thrive
is in parentheses. Now, these are the detective notes, so I don't know if he's getting this from the detective and just filling in the gaps, or this is 100% the psychic.
But they said the wooded area.
Didn't sit well with Chris. Vision of each girl wrapped in blankets after suffocated. Bodies were suffocated, not far from the home.
This was not public.
There's a number of contact person, and it was an anonymous tip, psychic from Massachusetts. If you believe that story, then I guess Nicole was not involved in the murders. It still doesn't answer the question about whether or not she conspired to commit the murders. But I guess it kind of does, because if there's no intent to harm, it means that there wasn't a plan. It just kind of happened in the moment.
Still murder though.
So my closing thoughts is, when it comes to cases like this, Occam's razor is a thing. You know what that is? Dominic, you know what that is?
I don't know.
The simplest explanation is best. So, in other words, if you have a confession and you don't have a whole lot of other evidence and you have all these crazy theories about what's going on, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. And the simplest explanation would be to believe Christopher Watts' confession to some degree, in that he was the sole person responsible for all of this.
Which we do think.
And that Nicole was not involved in the planning. And I got to tell you, the more that I've read into the text messages about Nicole, the more skeptical I am about her willingness to go as far as conspiring to commit a murder. Now, in this cross-exam, and I know a lot of you are going to get mad at me because I didn't reference the 2017 and the 2018 Google searches. And
I was
the reason
going to say,
I
I didn't hear
it wasn't
that.
going to go anywhere.
When she Googled Chris?
Yeah, there was just not enough connective tissue for a jury to connect the dots, or maybe there was, but I feel like it was just not going to score any points, and so I left it out. I also forgot to bring it up, so there's that. But it was not in my notes. It's something that I was going to bring up in the
He's
cross
human.
exam.
I mean, if I could add food for thought for that, they met at work, which we all know, but now maybe, like I said, she found him attractive. Maybe she just wanted to see who he was, and she was a young girl, so of course social media is her number one point of resource. So she just Googled him and see. That's where she got it from there.
Well, she Googled him back in 2017.
Back in 2017, exactly.
And in 2018, and she didn't work there.
And then Shanann.
At that time. She started working there later that year in 2018.
That's when they met.
Yeah. There's some theories about they met like at a gym somewhere, or she has some kind of Thrive event. I'm not going to go through all the
we don't know
theories
exactly
about that, but
She could have been a stalker.
well, yeah, that is one theory.
Mm-hmm.
That is one theory. So for that, let me know what you thought about that in the comments. I have no idea how that was going to go. I never know how these cross exams are going to go. I didn't know how Melissa was going to do.
She did fantastic.
And don't harp on her so much for not answering my questions, because she's not supposed to. She's supposed to basically answer in a self-interested way. And she's not supposed to have perfect recollection of everything. And so it's perfectly okay that she did that. It was my job to kind of drive the narrative. It's just kind of how that went.
The narrative
but let me know
was
your
fantastic.
thoughts about how that whole process took place. And let me know how you
Bravo.
if you were on the jury box, what you would say, guilty or innocent. But before we do that, and if you guys are only interested in the Christopher Watts thing, now is the time to duck out, because all right, Melissa, this is your first appearance ever on the new segment that we've been doing.
Oh, that's
Family
it?
Law After Dark. This is where we give general family law advice to the public that requests.
Is that it?
So this first one,
So that was it. The rest of the video is his other segment, which is okay. I mean, it's his channel, whatever have you. I was not thinking it was done. Man, this man did a fantastic job on this. And I'm hoping this is not done. Nichol needs to be held accountable for her actions. Again, I definitely want you guys to play the juror on this. If you were called in as a juror member of the 12 members that are in there, and you had to go deliberate with your fellow jurors and find a happy medium of what is to come of Nichol Kessinger, listening to what you have heard, yes, things cannot be 100% used in a court of law. I mean, the psychic and so forth like that. So it's not substantial to be included. I was kind of bummed out that he didn't use the 2017 look up Google searches that she had did. But that's the thing, is the closing, I wouldn't say closing argument, but for my partake as not being a legal representative or a attorney or a criminal justice professional, is that I see that Nichol had a lot of faults in her things. She couldn't substantiate her alibi of her whereabouts. She couldn't tell you exactly why she was in this vicinity at the exact same time, why her phone pinged. Yeah, okay, it's got a radius, whatever have you, but in all of everything, the one time that it actually pinged was the morning of said murders. That's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. She couldn't tell us where she was. She couldn't tell us about the phone calls. She couldn't tell us about this or that, this and like she literally had nothing that stated that she was innocent. Everything that she stated, like the whole Anadarko, she only came to the police because she knew that Anadarko had mentioned that there was an affair that was brewing, which, again, there's theories out there that possibly Anadarko was involved. somehow, some shape or form, which that doesn't make sense in itself. We're still looking at that. But again, Nichol Kessinger, in some shape or form, we don't know exactly, again, if it's physical, if it was not substantial, but it was not mental, but that she was a conspirator. This trial needs to be a reality instead of a mock. What is it going to take for this to actually happen? Millions or thousands, millions of people. I'm looking at every single thing. Guilty, 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 guilty. I don't see innocent anywhere. I'm seeing nothing but guilty. This mock-up was fantastic. There apparently was ones beforehand, which I can definitely watch and look at and add as in our I wouldn't say evidence, but content, as you will. Hopefully I will be definitely getting an able chance to collaborate with Omar at the Tilted Lawyer. But again, please comment your thoughts, your inquiries, your opinions. But again, please keep them positive. Please keep them, I wouldn't say professional, but keep them not unbiased, but debatable. Like, we don't have to sit here and be mean and negative towards one another. But this man did a fantastic job. Melissa, you did a fantastic job in being Nichol. I felt like I was watching the actual case. It was scary good. So, with that being said, do the comments as if you were a trial member of the jury. Please keep it positive. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content. We're going to be doing more cases. But again, I'm not giving up on this case. I want to see conviction. I want to see justice. And that is with Nichol being arrested, tried, and convicted of some type of involvement that she may have done. I thank you guys for watching. I know it was a long one, but it was definitely very good. So it's not hopefully something that was boring to you guys. I enjoyed it very much. And we'll see you guys in the next videos. Please take care. Keep it safe. And as always, keep nerding on. Give Omar some love as well. And we'll see you guys next time.